Hello, I'm here in the Guimar Valley, and I'm actually here to look at pyramids, but they have a little geology display, so I'm gonna show you some of the cool geology. Let me just see whether I can turn this around. So here is the Guimar Valley behind us, the big wall of the Guimar, but here's the little geology display, and I love it. So here we have the blob model. This goes back to people like Kai Hernle and Hans Schminke, who I was working with during my PhD, and Schminke was my supervisor. So this is Hernle and Schminke's model from the early 90s, and it's supposed to explain the activity in the eastern part of the island, like here in Lanzarote, the 1736 eruption, but at the same time the more frequent eruptions here on La Palma and also on Tenerife. And the idea is that we have blobs rising up from the mantle, and once we have a blob on an island, we get an episode of volcanism, a series of volcanism, and then once the blob, the fertile blob, is exhausted, then this will stop again. So at the moment there is an active blob under La Palma that feeds things, and Gomera doesn't have a blob. This is why Gomera didn't have eruptions in several million years, but Tenerife has a good old blob, and Gran Canaria doesn't really kind of have a lot of very recent eruptions. The last eruption there was about 100 years ago, 1900 years ago, so maybe it's not so active right now, but Tenerife had the last eruption in 1909. Fuerteventura, as I said, there was an eruption in 1730 to 36 and another one in 1824, and this model would explain why we actually have volcanism on either end of the archipelago. The classic Hawaiian suggestion would be that we have activity here at one end and the plate is moving this way. So if we have activity here and the plate is moving that way, only the front of the island chain should actually have active volcanism, but this is a little more dispersed in the Canaries, hence the blob model has been devised, and it's quite popular, and it's now some 25-30 years old and it's still going strong, so this is very good. And here we have the evolution of the islands. So initially there was Fuerteventura, the old island, and then this grew. Lanzarote and Fuerteventura, they grew together, and then we have Gran Canaria, and then Tenerife formed about 12 million years ago. Gran Canaria is a little older, it's about 14 to 16 million years old. Then La Gomera at about 9 million years, and then the young islands here in the very west of the island chain, they are about 2, 3, maybe 4 million years at max. The oldest rock in La Palma in the exhumed part, maybe about 4 million years, but much of it is a lot younger. So this is the evolution of the island chain, and here's a list of the historical eruptions in red, and indeed there's the ones on Lanzarote and Fuerteventura. These two islands here, they are connected with just a very thin or shallow bit of land that is under the ocean, only about 40 meters deep. So technically, when the sea level was a little lower, these two islands were connected. And then we have Gran Canaria and then Tenerife. Gran Canaria has no active volcanism, no recent and historical eruptions. Tenerife is different. There was eruption 1704, 1706, 1798, and then in 1909, and then of course La Palma, which had loads of eruptions, 1585, 1646, 1677 I think, and then 1712, and then 1949, 1971 in the very south of the island, and of course 2011. El Hierro had a submarine eruption, but that's of course not marked here. And here's a table of all the eruptions, of the historical eruptions, so I can actually check whether I got it right. There was one in 1646 on La Palma and one in 1677 on La Palma as well, and then there was the 1704, 1705 from Tenerife, 1706, 1712 from La Palma. So yes, and the Lomo Negro 1793 eruption on El Hierro, that's disputed. I think people are no longer convinced this is real. There were some earthquakes at the time, but the rocks have not been successfully linked to this eruption. There wasn't a lot of people living there, so there's also no eyewitness accounts. So I would, however, think that somebody would have seen it if there was an eruption, and this actually argues against it. So, but then we have the younger eruptions here, and El Hierro, the submarine eruptions, listed here as well. So this is the little volcano display here, but I want to go and see pyramids now. So again, thank you, and say all the very best, and hope to see you again very soon. So let's see. Yes, it should work. Bye bye. Thanks a mil. All the best.